Well, let's get the Government of Canada's perspective on today's federal budget from the Minister of Tourism and the Associate Minister of Finance, Randy Boissonnault, who joins me now. Minister, thanks for making the time.
It's my pleasure, Wyatt.
Let's start out with kind of one of the big centerpieces of today's budget,
Sure.
this grocery rebate for Canadians, providing $467 for families of up to 4 people. And there's some other eligibility criteria in there as well. I'm sure a lot of Canadians will appreciate that investment. But when looking in that investment, what else is the federal government doing on the affordability front? Considering that, yes, obviously, I'm sure that investment again is appreciated, but in many cases, $467 may only compensate for a family of 4 for, say, maybe 3, maybe 4 trips to the grocery store.
Well, I appreciate that analysis, and so you've summarized the Canada grocery rebate well. And I think if we step back, Wyatt, and just think about what we're trying to do here, we had 2 really big important goalposts with this budget, right? Preserve the AAA credit rating as the government of Canada, but at the same time, invest in those people who need it the most and not stoke the fires of inflation. And so you've seen our government make, great investments in supply side economics. So everything from the childcare funding to the funding that we have with the Canada Child Benefit. In budget 23, we have other affordability measures, such as making sure that we have a 40% increase in Canada student loans, and also allowing students to access more money out of their RESP. It hasn't been raised in 25 years, and so we've gone up from 5,000 to 8,000. So that's going to make things more affordable for students. We also are making sure that we attack some of these issues of affordability, like predatory loan rates. We're going to bring those down. We're also going to make sure that we go after junk fees. And, it seems like a small issue, but, if you have a phone or you have different people in your family and different phones, you got, 5 or 6 or 7 different chargers. We're going to harmonize those chargers for devices as well. And I think those affordability measures, when you add to the fact that we've got now in this budget, $4 billion set aside for urban, Indigenous, rural, remote, and northern housing, that's an important close the gap measure. That's really important. And the other affordability measure, and maybe it helps us segue into the second big pillar of the budget, Wyatt, is dental care. We've got, hundreds of thousands of Canadians, who make less than $90,000 a year, and they haven't had access to dental supports. It's too expensive. It's out of reach. And so we are committing for the long term, and it's a $13 billion piece of the budget, to have a permanent dental care program in place. We're going to start with 0 to 12, like we've already put in place, go from 12 to 18, and then expand from there. We just think it's the right thing to do to make sure that, Canadians who make a lower income are able to access dental supports.
And again, talk to me a little bit more about dental care in the sense of, obviously, this is something in particular that has been a big focal point of the supply and confidence deal with the NDP that your government has. When you look at dental care, how important was it for your government to make an investment of that nature in a program that I'm sure will help a large range of Canadians?
Well, I think, look, if we wanted to slow walk this, Wyatt, we would have, started at 0 to 12 and maybe held there. But the Liberal government, our government, believes in this program, believes in what we're trying to do to make dental care affordable for a broad swath of Canadians. And I mean, look, we should be in a country as wealthy as Canada is that, some of our most vulnerable citizens, our neighbors, are able to make sure that their kids can have their teeth cleaned, and that they themselves can make sure that they get a filling fixed, and that they're able to actually have good oral health. And I think it was a missing piece of healthcare. And the fact that we've been able to deliver this directly through CRA is an elegant solution to something that's, perplexed different governments. And so as a Liberal government, we're proud to do this, and we're gonna keep leaning in on making sure that Canadians have these kind of affordability supports while preserving our AAA credit rating, and make sure that we don't stoke the fires of inflation. Because we want to make sure, and look, the Bank of Canada governor said this in his last report, is that we're actually looking at 3% inflation, down to 3% inflation by the summer, and closer to 2% by December, which is very normal for inflation rates. And then we would anticipate interest rates, to lower, to follow that lower level inflation.
And I mean, when you look at the projected deficits as well, obviously that's been, I'm sure, an important issue for the Ministry of Finance when looking at how to construct this budget. How can you and how will the Ministry of Finance balance something like building a $40.1 billion budget with also at the same point in time balancing it to ensure that Canadians don't necessarily have to pay more in taxes. In other words, keeping inflation low.
So back to the AAA credit rating, right? Like we are at all-time low levels for being able to finance the debt that we have as Canadians, much lower than we saw pre-pandemic. And that's an important piece of how we're able to invest in the future. And part of the reason we're making these investments with the $40 billion in this year's budget deficit is to build the next economy. Like we're talking about a million EV batteries built at the St. Thomas plant built here by Volkswagen in my own city of Edmonton. We're going to have the world's largest net zero hydrogen plant. Like the LNG plant in Kitimat. When go down the list of even the president talked about Bromont, Quebec, and all the great things that are going to be happening there, and the corridor that we're going to have between Albany and Bromont, Quebec. I mean, when we're talking about making sure that we're building an economy for the future, for your future, and the future of millions of Canadians, now's the time to make this generational investment so that we have these building blocks for the economy of the future. If we don't, Wyatt, you could live through the deindustrialization of the country, and we don't want to see that. And so the naysayers will be, saying nay. And those of us who are optimistic and bullish about Canada's future are going to continue to make these generational investments.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Associate Minister of Finance and Minister of Tourism, Randy Boissonnault. Minister, thanks so much. Appreciate it. I know you have a busy schedule today, so thanks again.
Always a pleasure, Wyatt. Take care. Bye now.